The next morning, James made a show of cleaning around the pool. Within minutes, Sandra appeared at her kitchen window. When she emerged with her usual rehearsed smile, James called cheerfully. "Found a waterproof camera in the garage yesterday. Looks like Uncle Frank was quite the photographer." Sandra stumbled on her perfect lawn, composure cracking. "A camera?" "Yep, lots of summer memories by this pool, including last 4th of July, quite the celebration." All color drained from Sandra's face. "Those photos, they're not, I can explain." "No need," James said innocently. "I'm sure my uncle appreciated having such friendly neighbors." That afternoon, James spotted Sandra on her phone in her garden, gesticulating wildly. By evening, a black SUV with tinted windows parked across the street. The driver watched James's house all night. The game had escalated, but James still didn't understand why Sandra was so desperate about the pool itself, until he drained it. The pool service company arrived at 7:30 am on a Tuesday, a strategic choice by James, who had noticed Sandra's husband leaving for the airport with luggage every Monday night. The workers had just finished draining the murky water when James spotted something glinting in the sludge at the bottom. "Hold up," he called to the foreman. "There's something." The screech of tires interrupted him. Sandra's Mercedes SUV skidded into her driveway, and she exploded from the driver's side, still wearing yoga clothes, phone already at her ear. "Stop below AKT believe you are doing right TNO," she shrieked, sprinting across the street in designer athletic shoes, her perfect blonde bob disheveled for the first time since James had met her. James stepped between her and the pool. "Morning, Sandra. Didn't expect to see you. Aren't you usually at Pilates on Tuesdays? You need HOA approval for structural changes." She thrust her phone toward the workers. "I'm calling the police. This is illegal." The pool crew froze, looking to James, who smiled calmly. "Actually, I have all necessary permits." He produced a folder from his back pocket. "County approved. Also, I checked the HOA bylaws you so kindly provided. Above-ground pools can be removed with 24-hour notice to adjacent properties." He pointed to the certified mail receipts, delivered yesterday. Sandra's composure crumbled. She jabbed wildly at her phone, hands shaking. "Officer?" "Yes, emergency. 1422 Oakwood Drive. A man is destroying property and I believe there's evidence of a crime being destroyed." "Evidence?" James raised an eyebrow. "What kind of evidence would be in my pool, Sandra?" The pool foreman cleared his throat. "Sir, there is something down there." Sandra lunged toward the pool, but James caught her arm. "Let the professionals handle it." Within minutes, police cruisers pulled up, lights flashing. Officer Rivera, a veteran cop with tired eyes, took in the scene. "What's the emergency here, folks?" Sandra launched into a frenzied explanation about permits and HOA violations. Officer Rivera examined James's documentation with a bored expression. "These look in order, ma'am." But, Sandra pointed frantically at the pool. "He can't remove it. There's evidence." Officer Rivera's posture changed. "Evidence of what exactly?" Sandra faltered, realizing her mistake. I meant building code violations. The original installation was improper." The pool foreman interrupted, holding up something dripping with slime. "Found this caught in the filter intake. Some kind of jewelry." The blood drained from Sandra's face as Officer Rivera took the item, a woman's platinum bracelet with a distinctive diamond-encrusted pendant. "That's my bracelet," Sandra blurted, then immediately backpedaled. "I mean, it looks like a bracelet I lost." "Your bracelet," Officer Rivera repeated slowly. "And how would your bracelet end up in Mr.?" He checked his notes. "Mr. Carson's pool filter." Sandra's eyes darted to the nosy neighbors now emerging from their homes. "I must have lost it at a neighborhood gathering. Last summer," James added helpfully. "July 4th, perhaps, when my uncle was still alive." The look Sandra gave him could have frozen hell. Officer Rivera bagged the bracelet and asked both to come to the station to sort things out. As they walked to their respective vehicles, Sandra hissed, You have no idea what you've done. This isn't over. James smiled pleasantly. Oh, I think it's just beginning. That evening, James received an unexpected visitor. Bill Wilson, Sandra's husband, stood on his doorstep looking haggard and uncomfortable. I need to talk to you about today, Bill said, glancing nervously back toward his own house. And about your uncle. Over a beer in James's kitchen, Bill revealed what James had already begun to suspect. Sandra had been having an affair with James's uncle for nearly 2 years. Bill had discovered it months ago through text messages on Sandra's phone. I confronted her, and she swore it was over, Bill explained. Then your uncle died suddenly, and Sandra changed. She became obsessed with that pool. Kept saying we needed to get the new owner to remove it. But why? James asked, though he was beginning to understand. Bill hesitated. Sandra lost an expensive bracelet I gave her for our anniversary. She realized it must have fallen off during one of their meetings at the pool. She was terrified I'd find out the affair never ended, or that you'd find the bracelet and somehow figure things out. The pieces fell into place for James. Sandra's constant surveillance, her questions about renovation plans, her extreme reaction to the pool removal. It was all about recovering evidence of her infidelity before her husband discovered the truth. I already knew, Bill said quietly. I just wanted her to be honest. Instead, she's been lying to me for months while harassing you and making a spectacle of herself in front of the entire neighborhood. The conversation was interrupted by James's phone ringing. It was one of the contractors, calling with news that would change everything. The contractor had found something while finishing the pool removal, not a bracelet, but a waterproof phone in a sealed bag, wedged in the pool's filter system. The screen was cracked, but it still powered on. When Bill saw the phone, he recognized it immediately as belonging to James's uncle. Sandra had told him the police found it with his body, but clearly, that was another lie. The phone contained months of text messages between Sandra and James's uncle, including their plans to leave their respective situations and move away together. The final messages revealed a darker truth. Sandra had ended things abruptly after a heated argument by the pool, just days before his uncle's fatal heart attack. The next morning, as James was leaving for work, he witnessed Sandra being escorted from her home by police officers. Bill stood in the driveway, arms crossed, watching silently. Later that day, the neighborhood gossip network filled James in. Bill had filed for divorce, citing Sandra's harassment of James as the final straw in a marriage already damaged by infidelity. Furthermore, the messages on the phone had raised questions about his uncle's death that warranted further investigation. Within a week, Sandra had moved out of the neighborhood. The forensic examination of his uncle's phone and medical records would eventually determine that his heart attack was indeed natural, brought on by stress and a pre-existing condition, not foul play as briefly suspected. 3 months later, James completed the backyard renovation, replacing the old pool with a beautiful garden and patio. He often thought about the irony of the situation. If Sandra had simply left him alone, her secrets might have remained hidden. Instead, her desperate attempts to conceal evidence of her affair had exposed everything. As James hosted his first backyard barbecue that fall, several neighbors commented on how much they preferred his new garden to the old pool. No one mentioned Sandra Wilson, but everyone knew the story, a cautionary tale about secrets, lies, and karma's swift response. James raised his glass in a silent toast to his uncle, whose property had brought unexpected closure, not just for James's grief, but for the truth itself. Asterisk asterisk. The end asterisk asterisk. The lockbox clicked open, and the real estate agent placed the key in James's palm with a sympathetic smile. It's all yours now. I'm sorry about your uncle. At 34, with divorce papers still fresh on his kitchen table and credit card debt mounting, James stood on the cracked driveway staring at his unexpected inheritance, a modest 3-bedroom ranch with peeling blue paint and an above-ground pool that had seen better days. The late April sun glinted off the pool cover, which sagged in the middle from collected rainwater. Quite the fixer-upper, he muttered, trying to ignore the prickle of being watched. Across the street, a curtain twitched in the window of an immaculate colonial. Before James could even unload his first box, a woman in crisp linen pants and a cashmere sweater clicked across the street in designer sandals. "Sandra Wilson," she announced, extending a manicured hand. "Welcome to Oakwood Estates." Her smile was practiced, the kind that television hosts perfect, wide, but somehow cold. "I knew your uncle quite well." Something in her tone made James pause. "Did you?" "Neighborhood Association president," she explained, producing a thick folder from her designer tote bag. "Your uncle was lenient about certain neighborhood standards. That pool, for instance." She gestured with distaste. "It's been a topic at 3 community meetings." James glanced at the pool. "It looks functional enough." Sandra's smile tightened. "We were hoping the new owner might consider more appropriate landscaping options. My husband Bill and I would be happy to recommend contractors." She handed him the folder. "The HOA bylaws. The pool section is flagged." As Sandra walked away, James noticed her glance back at the pool with an expression that seemed less like disgust and more like fear. He shrugged it off, hauling boxes inside. That night, unpacking in the glow of a single lamp, James found a handwritten note tucked inside his uncle's desk drawer. "If anyone asks about the pool, especially Sandra, tell them nothing. Some secrets don't stay submerged." The handwriting was shaky, dated just 3 days before his uncle's fatal heart attack. James stared out the window at the moonlight, reflecting off the covered pool, suddenly understanding that he'd inherited something far more complicated than just a house with an eyesore in the backyard. By Memorial Day weekend, James had settled into a routine, but something wasn't right. Every time he ventured into the backyard, whether to mow the lawn at 10 a.m. or grill a late dinner, Sandra Wilson would materialize. Sometimes watering plants that weren't wilting, sometimes walking her Pomeranian that clearly didn't need another walk, always watching, planning to open the pool soon. She called over the fence one evening, startling James so badly he dropped his beer. "Jesus, you scared me." James wiped beer from his jeans. "Maybe. Depends on the cost." Sandra leaned over the fence. "I know an excellent removal service. Very discreet." "Removal? I was thinking more along the lines of chlorine tablets." "Oh," her smile faltered. "Well, what's your work schedule like?" "My husband's company handles estate planning. Perhaps we could help organize your uncle's affairs." "I'm good, thanks," James said, bemused by her persistence. "I work from home, so I have plenty of time to sort through things." Sandra's smile disappeared entirely. "You're always here?" That night, James couldn't sleep. His uncle's cryptic note about the pool nagged at him. At 2 a.m., he decided to tackle the garage, the one place he'd been avoiding. Behind stacked boxes, he discovered a locked filing cabinet. The key, he found, was hidden in a fake rock beside the pool filter. Inside the cabinet, beneath tax documents and insurance papers, lay a waterproof camera in a Ziploc bag. With trembling fingers, James turned it on. The first images were innocent enough: neighborhood barbecues, a birthday party. Then came July 4th of last year, his uncle's pool, illuminated by patio lights. Sandra Wilson, wearing a red bikini that matched the wine in her glass, her wedding ring conspicuously absent. The images progressed, growing more intimate. In the final photo, date stamped just 2 weeks before his uncle's death, Sandra was looking directly at the camera, mouth open in shock, caught in a moment of recognition. "Son of a bitch," James whispered. Uncle Frank was blackmailing her.